Howdy, folks. It's Farrell with Untamed TV. I'm here with Rhonda from Evalogue.Life, right?
Yes.
Evalogue, what kind of what does that even mean? Is that something you made up?
Well, kinda. It's after the word epilogue. We write people's stories. We do interviewing and family stuff.
Oh,
We also
really?
write, yeah.
So, you write stories for, like, just individual people, like autobiographies, or do you do it for whole families?
We do memoirs. We'll interview grandma. We also do some storytelling for local nonprofits and help them tell their stories and shine a light on all the great things they're doing.
So, why would somebody want to tell their story? It seems kind of vain. I mean, I could see if it was like you'd want to read the story of George Washington, or something like that. But I mean, why would anybody want to read the story of Farrell? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. So I personally believe that stories are so powerful. And maybe three main things that stories do. I would say the first one is that stories bind families together. There's this wonderful New York Times article that we got a hold of. This guy's named Bruce Feiler, and he has a family, like all of us, right?
Yes.
And he was going along, his family was fine until it wasn't. And because his family was struggling, he went and did some research on what makes a strong family. And the results surprised him. And he found through all this research that there was one strong thread. Families that tell stories stay together. And he said that not only just any story is great, like just how did you meet, where did you grow up, but there's one type of story in particular, and he calls it this oscillating narrative, where we've had some good times and we've had some bad times, but we stuck together and we always made it through. He said when you tell those kinds of stories with your children, it makes them more resilient, it makes them better able to handle stress, and it keeps your family together. It's pretty simple, but pretty powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you sit around and I'm going to a family reunion this summer, and all I can think about is all the great stories. I've heard them a million times, but there's still great stories to hear, and I never even thought about that would be good to write down and put in a book.
Or just when you're there, pull out your phone. It's got an app recorder in it. Record it while you're there, or get a handy little recorder like this. They don't cost a lot.
I was just going to say, I have an older brother, and he tells the best stories in the world. I don't know if they're all true. He may embellish a little bit here and there, He would be really easy to interview. But let's say someone like my mom. My mom, I love my mom to death, don't we know, but my mom's kind of short answered and kind of, how would you get someone like that to open up and talk about stuff?
Well, first give them a heads up that you want to talk to them and tell them why. Tell your mom what having her stories would mean to you, and having her voice on audio so that someday when she's not here anymore. I can tell you in my own family, I have audio of my dad singing, and I couldn't have known then. I have a daughter now who's named for him. I brought this.
Is your daughter?
Here's my daughter. She's named for him, and she never met him. And she knows him through those interviews and through the stories.
That actually brings up a great point, because my father passed when I was 8. And I always wonder, because I was so young, just what did his voice sound like? I have no idea what my dad sounded like at all.
Right.
That would be a great record to have.
What would you give now
exactly.
to hear your dad's voice?
Yep, for sure.
And can I just say that's why we're doing this work, this with Evalogue, because it's so important and it's so easy. There's no reason now with the technology that we have that we shouldn't capture our parents or our grandparents while they're still here.
I was going to say, you don't need anything too fancy.
You don't need anything fancy.
You got some recorders here, and I mean, who doesn't have a tablet or an iPad?
Right, you can do it. The iPad has a great built-in recorder. Your smartphone has a great recorder. Or one of these babies is like $50 on Amazon. And I love my little recorder here. So you're asking them about how to get your mom to warm up. I should ask you. You interview people all the time. You probably have some great icebreaker questions.
Well, actually, the first thing I usually do, because we do another show besides this, the first thing I'll do is I'll ask somebody their name, and then of course I'll ask what kind of an event we're at, and then I just listen to what they have to say, and from what they're saying, then I can start asking other questions. I think the interview process, and as bad as I hate to say this, I think is listening to what they're saying so you can give back. You can dig out of them what you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does
You
that make
kind of
sense?
just nailed it, actually. That's the most important thing, is to be a good listener and be interested and totally focused on them. Now, it's good to go with a few icebreaker questions. One of my favorite icebreaker questions I actually got from a marriage counselor that I know. She asks couples, how did you meet? And it breaks the ice and it gets them talking. And from there, then the conversation flows. And it's good to do some homework. We also, on our website, have lists of questions and a free interview course. Like it'll take you through from today. In 7 days, you'll be ready to do an interview. You can just download it. It's a PDF. But it has great questions in it, too.
I was just going to ask, what are some, I mean, you have icebreaker questions, but what are some of the questions, your favorite questions to ask people as you're interviewing them? Do you have like standard ones that you always ask, or?
We have a list of standard questions that you can ask anyone, and I kind of pull them out generally. I think one of my very favorite questions is, tell me about a time when you didn't know if you would make it.
Oh, jeez.
Right? Because that's not, like, people think of family history and they think, oh, it's a name and a date, and it's so boring. What you really want to know is, how did you get through the tough times?
You know what that reminds me of? There's a comedian named Dimitri Martin, and he said, on your headstone, you have a birth date, and then a slash, and then a death date. And all your accomplishments and achievements and great things you've achieved in life is just a dash on your headstone. You know,
Yeah,
they should have the birth date and then ... So there's some kind of anticipation, and then the date you died. But that's exactly what it reminds me of, because that's the truth. You know, all while they were born in '78 and they died in 2012, and it's like,
And
didn't a bunch of stuff happen in the middle?
I know. So, okay, here's a quiz for you.
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to actually ask you to
Good.
rattle
Is that a
this
math
off. But
question, is it?
No, well, sort of. Can you even name all 8 of your great-grandparents?
I can't name one of my great-grandparents.
Let alone, do you know who they were?
No, and I don't know who my dad's parents were either. And my mom's mom was the only grandparent I ever met that was my maternal grandparent was my mom's mom.
Wow. So what would you give for some stories about them?
Oh, exactly. Yes,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah, in 1 hour, a 90-minute session with somebody, you can get so much. It's enough. If all we do is sit down and do that one thing with our family members, it's priceless.
That's what I need to do. I need to bring my family in here and interview them.
You do.
You know what? I don't think we'd have enough beer to get my family in here, to be honest with you. So, how did you get started doing this?
Well, I didn't start out in this line of work. I had a different day job. I was working at the Ogden Weaver Tech College. But in 2007, I'll preface this by saying I'm kind of an intuitive person.
Okay.
And I had this sense that I was supposed to be doing some writing. I'm not a writer by trade, although I've always done it for a hobby. I had no idea what I wanted to write about, but I actually put a date on my calendar, and I said, on this date, I'm going to sit down and just see if there's anything there. I'll just get a notebook out and I'll start writing. I circle the date on my calendar. I sit down on that date, start writing, and everything that came out was about my parents. Just stuff they'd taught me growing up in a family business. And I got a phone call an hour later that my dad had just passed away.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course I didn't think about writing for a while. I mean, we were,
You had
we're
other
grieving.
things pressing.
Other things pressing, but a few days later I was with my mom, and keep in mind, they were married for 55 years.
Oh, wow.
They worked together, they were together,
man.
inseparable for 55 years, and I thought, what's she gonna do?
Yeah.
And then I realized that's what we're supposed to do. We're gonna write their story. And we did, and that helped us get through the grieving process.
I cannot begin to tell you how great of an idea I think this is. I don't know anybody else, but no, it's a really great idea. How did you get started doing this? What?
Well, I wrote that book. My mom and I, we sat down and we thought that we might just get a few stories out, and we just kept going, and we published a book, and it changed my life. And when I got to see my nieces and nephews, they sent me texts. I got this text from my nephew. He's tattooed. He's a tough kid. He says, when I read that book, it made me proud to be an Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. My father was in the Korean War, and he did a lot of construction work, and I couldn't imagine the stories he would be able to tell.
Yeah.
You know, let alone how much fun it would be to hear them. And I think that'd be more than anything. That would be a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. People get nervous about doing an interview, but don't be nervous. It's such a gift. It's a gift to the person you're talking to listen and to care, because I heard once that people that are dying, one of the great fears that they have is being forgotten.
Yeah.
And when you sit down and pay them the respect of listening to their stories and their life, it strengthens your relationship. It will teach you. You'll come away wanting to be a better person, I guarantee it.
I still, and I know this sounds cheesy, but I still cannot believe what a great idea this is.
Thank you.
I honestly believe that. So if you have a website or a Facebook, or do you have anything people
We
can
do.
get in
Our
touch with you?
website is www.Evalogue.Life, and on that site we have just a ton of tools. Of course, we do this work for a living, so if someone wanted us to come out and help, but
Oh, so you could come out and like do the interviews for them and
sure,
talk with them? And
we
give
actually
them
do professional interviewing, and we write stories for people, whether it's a short vignette or an entire book. We have several books in process.
Even if you, let's say you're like real egotistical, right? You wanted to write a book about yourself, you could do the same thing. Say, come in, ask you questions about things you've done and stuff, and then help you write a book about you.
Exactly, and we do that. We have several books that we're writing for people right now. And I don't think it's egotistical at all, because it cements your family's values. It teaches what you've learned in life.
See, I'd write a book about how I, invented the letter Q and stuff like that, stuff that no one would believe. But it's in the book, it's got to be true.
Right, I wrote it.
Alrighty, so make sure you look for Evalogue.Life.
Evalogue. Yes.
And check it out. Great idea, great story. Thanks for coming and talking to me, Ron. I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
UNTAMED.